you never have enough, can't afford the cost of living, can't afford to buy a house. So I was like, this is a life-defining journey that I have to take. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Yeah, how important is this to you? Adapting to long-term travel is very different than taking a short vacation because this becomes your life. Wow, I feel like there's really a hunger for content about Da Nang. Meet the cheapest city in Southeast Asia. And this video has nearly 1 million views and got me so many thousands of followers. I love it, Ubud, probably my favorite place on my entire trip around the world. Da Nang was definitely much cheaper. What I was paying in Bali was worth it. Bali is just a lot more fun. And yeah, I mean, it's breathtaking. I mean, you're just sitting on the back of this motorbike being driven all across like these stunning rolling green landscapes. I was chased by vicious dogs walking through the neighborhood to get to my Airbnb. And it was like one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. I mean, I had my phone stolen out of my pocket in Cambodia. And then eventually someone on a motorbike drove by, snatched it out of my back pocket and drove off. Oh yeah, that was probably the worst experience. The worst day of my travels for sure. I spent a total of $34,000 on that entire journey. I felt like my life wasn't worth living unless I did that trip.
I'm Evan, this is the Cost of Living Abroad pod, and I'm really excited to meet and talk to you, Helen. So can you introduce yourself and basically tell us your story about living abroad and traveling abroad? Do you know what your total Vietnam spend was for your 2 trips here, and what was it, maybe 6 weeks total, 8 weeks total?
I know I have the number.
What's the number? Big reveal. Total budget spend.
So for my first 2-week trip to Da Nang and Hoi An and Saigon, I spent $1,387. But that included $500 for clothes.
Okay.
So the grand total is about $800.
Okay.
Yeah. And then for the next trip to North Vietnam for a month, about a month to 5 weeks, was $1,918.
Okay. Yeah, okay, so that's good. $2,000 for a month in the north. That's pretty affordable. And that's including the $300 motorbike trip in Ha Giang.
Including that.
Pros and cons of different countries. And again, we'll focus on Southeast Asia, but to Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam regionally, what was your favorite country that you visited in this part of the world?
Ooh. Favorite?
Or your best experience?
Honestly, this might sound very cliche, but I would say Bali.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, I've been to Bali once, long time ago, maybe 15 years ago. Tell me, and I did the classic Denpasar, what's the Eat, Pray, Love town? Ubud, and then Uluwatu.
Oh, okay, cool.
Tell me about the Bali experience and why it was so memorable.
I feel like there's definitely a non-memorable way to do Bali and a very memorable way to do Bali, in my opinion. The very touristy strip of beach area, like Kuta, Seminyak, Canggu, I don't like. I think the beach is not that nice. It feels very rowdy. It feels very just noisy, kind of congested, and it's just like, I feel like it's just where tourists go to party, and with mediocre beaches. So I don't really like that area. But still, there's some like beautiful cafes and good restaurants, things like that. But what I love Ubud. So Ubud was pretty much my home base. Like it was actually probably my favorite place that I spent time in on my entire trip around the world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why aren't you there?
Yeah, I mean, I will be eventually. I'm gonna go back at some point for sure. But it's it's just so green, it's so lush, and not only that, but you can take a lot of day trips from Ubud to the most beautiful waterfalls and jungles and rice fields that I've ever seen. So I love just basing myself out of Ubud and going to beautiful cafes every day. taking yoga classes, meditation, things like that, and also taking those day trips out of Ubud.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think there's a sort of comparison or idea among some people that like, can Hoi An become the kind of thing that Ubud is? You know, a place where people go for yoga retreats and meditation and to sort of escape and live a quiet or digital nomad lifestyle. I definitely, yeah, I loved Ubud too, and I have also beautiful memories of the, really incredible healthy food and the Balinese culture there was so strong and beautiful. The temples.
Yeah, I just think that I feel like in Indonesia, in Bali, I found the best combination of nature and infrastructure and price. The nature is just so lush, and the waterfalls, the greenery, the jungles. I didn't spend that much time at the beach in Bali, but also the infrastructure. I feel like Bali has like really nice restaurants, cafes, like upscale, beautifully landscaped, hotels, and still like the typical pricing I'd find for like a very comfortable mid-range hotel would be like $20 to $25 per night. But what I was getting was much nicer than like what I got for that price in Laos, for example, or Thailand, or Bangkok, or Chiang Mai.
Right. So the value, like what you were getting for your dollar was extremely high in Bali. That's interesting to hear. I think the last time I was there was 2010, and I've sort of, it's so hard to actually know what people are saying on the internet versus your own felt experiential reality. I mean, that's why people really need to do their own trips and experience things for themselves before they make long-term relocation decisions. Yeah, I think of Bali as probably having better infrastructure than Vietnam, but the flip side is that some people would think of it as being overdeveloped or too touristy. How did you experience, say, the beaches and Ubud in Bali compared to a Hoi An, Da Nang experience?
At the time, Da Nang was definitely much cheaper. I mean, I was paying $9 per night. What I was paying in Bali was worth it. It was worth the extra cost, because I still found the nature in Bali to be much nicer than in Da Nang. I like the lushness, I like the greenery, and I think Bali is just a lot more fun. Like Da Nang is really chill, and it is a great balance of like urban and life and nature, but it's not the most like thrilling place to be, which was fine for me because I wasn't looking for excitement at the time. I was very tired. I really enjoyed the chill vibes. Yeah, Bali is just so much fun.
I mean, the amenities, the excitement, the things to do in somewhere like Bali or like Koh Samui, Thailand, or like Krabi, Thailand, compared to Da Nang and Hoi An can't be understated. I mean, people talk so much about the cost of living and the price here, and of course, this show is called The Cost of Living Abroad. There is, in a very literal way, much less to do here, right? And if you're looking for a quiet, remote working location, or like us, we have kids, it's great. It is wonderful. But this is not, you're not going to have an action-packed even a week here, right? I mean, there's just a couple things to do. There's the trip to Marble Mountain, there's a float down Coconut River in Hoi An, and there's a drive up to Hai Van Pass, and there's the theme park, Bana Hills, or golf or something. But like, I mean, I think what it does offer is like a very relaxed, beautiful place to spend winters if you're a retiree, or if you're someone who can work, half the year in the US and half the year in Southeast Asia during winters or something like that. Like, my parents love it here compared to Ho Chi Minh, right? For their experience of just wanting to escape winters and spend 2 or 3 months in a hotel by the beach. It's amazing. What was your budget in Bali or in Ubud for like average daily spend?
Yeah, I think in Ubud, in Bali in general, I'd spent about $20 per night. On the high end, about 25. So let's say like 22. And on food and coffee, etc., maybe about $15. Maybe transportation, maybe a maximum about $5. So yeah, let's say like $40 to $50 daily budget.
At the time, maybe double the cost, and I bet I bet now it would be more like Daang would cost 60 or 70% as much as Bali, like or as Ubud. I don't think you can. I don't know how you would live here on $25 a day unless you were literally living like a local.
Yeah, yeah. Now it's probably more like Bali prices.
Probably a similar setup to what you had a few years ago. He's paying double that price now for accommodations here.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. But the flip side is that the food, the tours, that kind of stuff, I think it's the exact same price.
Yeah, that's what everyone says.
It is incredibly easy for me to walk out my front door and get coffee for 60 cents, a banh mi for 80 cents, a full lunch for under $2. It's not like you don't have to try to do this. You just go to a place that has a Vietnamese sign.
But that would probably be like a pretty local place though, right? Like it's not like the trendiest restaurant, right?
Yeah, local, but also I don't live city side, so I do live on the ocean side.
Ah, okay.
Is still touristy. I live
okay.
in Sun Chow, which is actually like a Korean expat community mostly. It's where the majority of tourists here are still Korean, Taiwanese, or mainland Chinese.
Oh.
And by far, right? The percentage of tourists in Vietnam who are Western is like less than 5%.
Oh, really?
How did you feel safety-wise in Bali, Thailand, Vietnam, traveling alone?
I always felt safe, but that's also why I actually didn't party that much, because I didn't want to go out at night by myself. And I was solo like most of the time. I mean, so, I'd meet friends and with friends I would go out, but I was solo a lot of the time. So I didn't really go out walking around at night much. So I feel like I took necessary precautions. Pretty safe.
What are the precautions you take as an experienced solo traveler and as a woman to feel like you're not putting yourself at risk or in harm?
This is actually a lesson I learned in South America that I applied going forward. I tend to choose hotels toward the city center, as opposed to booking an Airbnb in a suburban neighborhood or something like that. Because I was chased by vicious dogs walking through the neighborhood to get to my Airbnb. And it was one of the scariest experiences I've ever had. And literally I felt like my life was flashing before my eyes as I was trying to run away, screaming from the dogs. So then I realized, okay, I just want to be in the city center, not having to walk through neighborhoods. So that was one thing. Another thing is being home by usually 8 p.m. If I'm out after that, it's usually because I'm meeting people, and I'll just take the public transportation to the whatever venue I'm meeting them at, and then just go straight home. So I don't go walking around in areas without people that are dark, And also I bought this anti-theft backpack. Made me feel a little better.
What about on the back of motorbikes or on the back of grab bikes?
Did I ever feel weird getting on the back of a grab bike? Definitely not. I feel like I wasn't really out at night that much, but if I ever was and I needed to take a grab bike or car, no, I don't think I ever felt weird about it. It's just a general feeling that the people just seemed really sweet and gentle. And I mean, a lot of them were also very small, physically. Something I noticed in Hoi An was a lot of my Grab drivers were just so tiny. I felt like I was bigger than some of them. So yeah, there's that too. They're not these big burly men.
What was your actual turning point to act, to shift your life online or remote and your work remote for a year, to take a year off work and to actually get up and go and do it? How did you take that leap of faith?
I actually don't think that it's everyone's dream to do something like that. I feel like it's pretty extreme, and most people are prioritizing a lot of other things because I think there's a lot of sacrifices that you have to make to actually do something like that, and it can be very scary, and not everyone would want to do that. Maybe a lot of people would do it if they had a ton of money, where they didn't really have to give much up to go do something like that. But so yeah, I mean, I bet a lot of people who do it, they were like millionaires. I think I just had like a thirst for travel that's much more than the average person. That I caught like the travel bug when I was about 24. And then I just like couldn't stop traveling. I was always wanting to plan my next adventure. I just resolved that one day I was gonna take a year and a half off and travel the world full time. So that was like my dream from my early 20s, and I always had that vision in mind. But I think in order to give myself the permission to do that, I had to feel like I had accomplished enough and hit some key like career and financial goals. Basically, after I spent about 5 years at CNBC and as a video journalist and really made my dreams come true at the company, and I had hit a certain like position in the company and a certain level of income, and I had saved up a bunch of money. And that's when I was about 32 years old, before having kids, and I was like, okay, it's now or never. I think I really gave up the job security. Like, I'm in an industry that's extremely, extremely volatile and unstable, and there's very few like well-paid, fun, cool jobs doing what you love in this industry. And I had that, and I worked really, really hard to get there. It was extremely, extremely difficult for me to finally get there. And so I gave up the certainty that I would have that. Since I've gone back from my trip, I don't have that. Yeah, I could have that back at some point. I kind of like lost that, because once I got back, thousands and thousands and thousands of journalists had been laid off. The industry is just, in shambles. Was in shambles by the time I got back in 2024. And my former employer, who said, we can't imagine a world where we wouldn't have you back, now had no positions for me. Well, the thing about Southeast Asia, I had my phone stolen out of my pocket in Cambodia. You can be a little bit more of a target for theft if you're uncareful, just by being, because you're traveling in countries that are very poor. Some people, they need to resort to things like that, to get by. And so that's what made me feel a little more unsafe. Like, not unsafe, like worried about my physical danger, but more so at risk of theft. So yeah, I had to be on high alert about that. No, I don't think it's necessarily because it's more unsafe in Cambodia than in Thailand and or Vietnam. I mean, maybe that's true. I just feel like I haven't spent enough time to be able to say that. Sure. Yeah, but it was just my experience because I was so not careful. Like, I was stupid. And it's funny because I did 3 months in South America, which everyone says is so unsafe. So I was on extremely high alert in South America, but I had relaxed so much when I got to Southeast Asia because I was like, oh, it's so safe, it's so safe. Sometimes I just had my bag like lying unwatched, unattended in a very crowded place in Thailand. Or in Thailand or in Siem Reap, Cambodia, and nothing would happen to it. And I was like, yeah, everything's fine. But in Phnom Penh, Cambodia, I had my phone in my back pocket with headphones coming out of it, and I was listening to my headphones. So it was very obvious there was a phone there, and I was in a crowded touristy area. So I think someone started kind of like following me, actually. And then eventually someone on a motorbike drove by, snatched it out of my back pocket and drove off. Oh yeah, that was probably the worst experience. The worst day of my travels for sure. Ugh. Well, the next day I just started walking around to different like phone retailers around Phnom Penh. And so I bought a new phone the next afternoon. And so I was just kind of trying to focus more so on being grateful for the fact that I could do that. Like literally the next day I can just go out and buy a new phone. That was like $800. Whereas that would be like completely prohibitively expensive for tons of people in Southeast Asia. So it was like a learning lesson, like that I have to be very vigilant. And I have not lost my phone since then.
What's a piece of advice that you would give to someone who's planning their big move abroad, planning to leave the West or America behind?
Definitely got to start with having money saved up, of course. Oh, well, I spent a total of $34,000 on that entire journey. So that is not an inconsequential amount of money. And I spent a good amount of my savings doing that. So it's kind of just like evaluating where are you at in your life and can you afford something like that? How much does it affect future goals? You know, what are your goals in life? What do you want to get out of life? Because I knew that I felt like my life wasn't worth living unless I did that trip. So I was like, this is a life-defining journey that I have to take. So I'm willing to make that sacrifice. Yeah, how important is this to you? Does it fit into your life vision? And then also asking them, like, how do you want to spend this trip? Because I think some key learning lessons along my journey was the pace of it. Like, do you want to prioritize adapting to long-term travel is very different than taking a short vacation because this becomes your life. I think happiness is about balance because definitely when I was traveling as though I was just on vacation all the time, I became very burned out and unhappy. So then it was like, well, what is the point of even doing all this if I'm not enjoying it? Because I'm just constantly on the go. Everywhere just starts to kind of feel the same. Yeah, the novelty wears off.
You actually have a background as a professional video journalist. So tell me a little bit about that experience so far. Like I think you just hit 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, when I was working at CNBC, I made videos for YouTube. The intro was like, meet the cheapest city in Southeast Asia. And this video has nearly 1 million views and got me so many thousands of followers on Instagram. And I realized like, wow, I feel like there's really a hunger for content about Daang right now. I felt like Daang was still kind of like a rising star. Like it isn't I feel like it's not a household name yet, quite like Bali or Mexico City or Lisbon, but it's really on the up and up. And so I was like, okay, I think that there's still a hunger for this type of content, the content about Daang. People are still learning about it. People are still really curious. And I also felt like there's so much hype about Daang right now. It's still very much in the middle of this. I feel like Daang is still very much in the middle of this hype cycle. But when I did some more digging around, I realized that the narrative on the ground is starting to shift a bit because I was in these private Facebook groups where their tone about what's happening on the ground in Daang can be actually a lot more negative in many of these conversations when talking about like gentrification, the cost of living going up, having a hard time finding rent.
What's something that I didn't ask you that I should have asked you or that I could ask the next guest on the Cost of Living Abroad pod?
I think that maybe a part of my journey or many other digital nomads' journeys is maybe the quality of life. I mean, maybe we didn't talk as much about like quality of life. You know, for example, I think a big part of my experience was that I just felt so free and comfortable in a way that I've never really felt while living in the US. You know, I felt so on top of the world and like I had more than enough when I was traveling. You know, like I felt wealthy. I felt like I had accomplished more than enough. I felt so grateful for everything that I have and that I was given at birth in a way that, you know, I almost never feel in the US, which is, you know, kind of like stressed out. Just you never have enough, can't afford the cost of living, can't afford to buy a house. How am I gonna raise kids in this city? And, you know, like you never really feel like you're enough. And I feel like traveling the world gave me, or at least, you know, in Southeast Asia and South America, gave me so much perspective